In this chapter, we will discuss operating system structures. In particular, we will talk about different operating system services. So what is user operating system interface? What is a system call? And the different types of system calls. We will also briefly talk about what is a system programs. And then we will discuss what is operating system structures at the end of this chapter. As we have mentioned, operating system is like a government to provide an environment for different programs to execute and do some useful task for users. So like we have discussed, the operating system from user aspect and the system aspect, services provided by the operating system to programs and users can be divided into two categories. So one set of functions are helpful for users. So these functions can help users to use the computer, programs, and operating system very easily and conveniently. The other side of the functions provided by the operating system to ensure the system operated efficiently and to use the system resources in an efficient and fair way. In this slide, we are going to talk about more details for a view of operating system services. So operating system as a stage sit in between hardware, user, and other system programs to provide different services to users, programs, and hardware. So first, let's see the user interface. So there are multiple types of user interfaces. The most common user interface is GUI, which is usually we call it GUI, which is shorted for graphical user interface. So most of the operating systems will interact with users through this way. For example, Windows, Mac OS, or some versions of Linux. Another type of user interface is command line, so which we are going to use the mostly in this course to compile your programming assignment in the Linux system. So when the user programs or some other system programs request the service from the system, so after the operating system received the service request from the user through the system call, then the corresponding service will be triggered to respond this system call. The service can be divided into many categories. For example, program execution service. So when a process has been created in the main memory according to a program, so later it will be executed in the CPU. If the process needs to do an I/O, the process will be temporarily moved out of the CPU and put some other process in the CPU. So later, the suspended process will be retrieved and finish its execution. So for I/O operations, as we just mentioned, when the process needs to do the I/O operation service will be requested. So then the data will be sent to the corresponding device controller. So later, if there are some feedback data, the I/O operation service will forward the data back to the corresponding process. And also, the operating system will provide file systems and the communication services to the users. For communication service, so later you will know that the communication may happen within different processes. So there are two major communication ways. One is called message passing. Another one is called shared memory. So in later chapters, so when we talk about the communications, you will know how did they work. The communication is not only happened between the processes within the same computer, but also happen on the processes that are located in different computers. So in that situation, the computer network involves. However, the knowledge of that part is already beyond the domain of this course, but we have another course which focused on computer networks. It's called Introduction to Computer Networks. So if you are interested in that one, you can take it later. And the next service is resource allocation. So since numbers of processes running in the operating system simultaneously, the system resources are shared among them. For example, the CPU, main memory, file system, etc. The resource allocation service will help the operating system to allocate the system resources fairly among all the processes to make everyone happy, and also improve the responsiveness to the user. The next service is called accounting service. So sometimes the user needs to pay the money for using the operating system. Then the accounting service can help the operating system to do that, either by time or by the usage of other resources, such as amount of storage. So for example, the user pay money for 10 gigabyte of storage. The accounting service will guarantee that the usage of the storage for that user will not beyond that limit. And for error detection service, so if you still remember when we talk about the interruptions, especially for software triggered interruption, the error detection service keeps tracking all the behaviors happened inside the operating system. So when some error happened, the software generated interruption as exception, so will be triggered into the system. Through the error detection service, it will terminate the program to avoid the error affect other programs, and also generate an error message to notice the user. So what is the problem just happened? And the last service is protection and security, so which is used to protect the user's file, to protect the data inside a process, in order to guarantee the file or data won't be mistakenly modified by other programs or by other users. And also, if there are some virus, worms, or some other attacks from the internet, and the operating system will try its best to enforce the security and protect the entire system from those attacks.